Welcome back into another edition of Prime Sports World, coming to you on a Thursday. I'm, of course, your host, David On Point Huffman. Man, it's trouble saying my name over here now. I should be joined here momentarily by the CEO of Prime Sports World, Mr. Israel Rivera. On today's show, we're going to be breaking down the NFC South, all the offseason previews for every single team in that division. That includes the Carolina Panthers, Atlanta Falcons, New Orleans Saints, and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And all four of these teams are a little bit of crossroads where they don't really know what's going on with their future. Also, please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast as we stream on all the major platforms, including Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. And also, if you want to catch, if you happen to miss us live, you can catch us on a plethora of streaming services, including the Apple Podcast, Spotify, Amazon Music, and then iHeartRadio. I will go ahead and share that into the group chat here on the StreamYard. So if you want to check us out over there, you're more than welcome to do so. Also, if you wanted to join us to talk a little football action, you're more than welcome to do that as well. So hopefully everybody's doing well. Everybody's having a good day. This is Thursday. I'm David Huffman. Israel Rivera should be joining me first here shortly. Let's get started with the first team here in the preview. It's the Atlanta Falcons when we talk about their offseason. Their draft capital is right there on the screen. I would say that they have the 8th overall pick in this year's draft. They have a second rounder. They have a third. They have a fourth from the Tennessee Titans. I think that came from the Julio Jones trade. How long ago was that? They have their own 4th-round pick. They have a 5th-round pick from Jacksonville. They got back for Calvin Ridley, who they traded before the trade deadline. Round 6, round 7 from the Las Vegas Raiders. And then they have the 7th-round pick from Buffalo. So yeah, they have a lot of picks here because they're a team that needs to be rebuilding. The notable free agents is Lance McCarter, Caleb McCary, Isaiah Oliver, Jermaine Ifedi, Alamode Zaccheaus, a good wide receiver. They have $56.5 million in cap space. Their head coach, Arthur Smith, Terry Fortnott, Greg Beatles, and so that's the team president on their team, GM Terry Fortnott. So how do you think the Atlanta Falcons should approach their free agency and the draft? I think it really has to do with figuring out who the starting quarterback for this team is. I know they had Desmond Ridder as their starting quarterback for towards the end of this season, as Marcus Mariota was there for the first couple of games and played okay. Had the Atlanta Falcons in playoff contention early in the season since nobody wanted to win the NFC South at the very beginning of the season. But it just really ended up shaking out that way. Atlanta Falcons kind of fell back in the pack, ended up with a losing record. They went from being potentially winning this division to the worst team in it within the span of a few weeks, really, because they lost that game to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a game they could have won. To really bolster themselves up in the playoff contention there. They end up running with the 7-10 record. 3 other teams in the NFC South also had 3-10 records, or 7-10 records. The New Orleans Saints, Carolina Panthers, Tampa Bay obviously won this division with an 8-9 record, as it was Tom Brady's lone losing season ever. But yeah, they're at a bit of a crossroad. I mean, they moved on from Matt Ryan. It doesn't seem that Marcus Mariota is clearly part of the future plans. Big picture for the Atlanta Falcons. I don't know if it's totally clear if Desmond Ridder is going to be the guy there. But the question is you have to ask is, are the Atlanta Falcons a quarterback away from being competitive in the NFC South or in the NFC in general? I just don't think that's the case. I think they have a lot of holes on this team. Jake Matthews and Caleb McCary are still good tackles. Welcome to the show, CEO Israel Rivera. Welcome to the show, man.
What's going on, guys? How you doing?
Doing well, man. Doing well. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Talking about the NFC South, the lowly NFC South.
Yep, the worst division in football last year, statistically. We were just talking a little bit about what do you think their approach should be to the draft and free agency.
Well, the jury's still out on Desmond Ridder, so no need to get a quarterback here.
At least not in the first round. I think you can wait.
Not in the first round.
I mean, if that kid from Stanford falls to like round 3 or 4, I think you could grab him.
Tanner McKee, yeah,
that's him. Yep.
Yeah.
I also think the kid from Tennessee, who's probably not going to play this season anyways. I mean, that's a guy that you could potentially bring back.
Oh yeah, Hendon Hooker.
Well. Yeah, Hendon Hooker, who's probably going to win the Heisman if he doesn't get hurt.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, if he doesn't, they don't lose to what was it, LSU and South Carolina. Yeah. Oh yeah, Georgia and South Carolina. But yeah, man, I forget who I had them picking here at number 8.
Let me go
Lordy
back in
Lord.
my mock draft. I don't remember who I had them taking either.
Yes, honestly, they need a little bit of everything. I would say, um, I would say focus on, I want to say weapons, but they got enough weapons offensively. I'd say defense. I
I
mean,
mean,
DB.
not really. I mean, outside of Drake London, I mean, Kyle Pitts got injured early last season, didn't finish the year. I mean, and they traded away Calvin Ridley. Alameda Zaccheaus is a free agent. That
Mm-hmm.
running back room is kind of all over the place with, um,
Bit
you don't
thin,
really,
bit thin
yeah,
there.
yeah, I don't know. I had them taking Peter Skoronsky, the left tackle out of
The left tackle.
Northwestern.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. No, so I think I might have had them taking like Paris Campbell or something like that in the top 10 from Ohio State, offensive lineman or a wide receiver. I mean, you can
Especially
definitely go.
if they lose Caleb McCary there in free agency, they're going to be looking for another right tackle. I think Jake Matthews is still good, and he's still shockingly still young, so he could potentially stay there at left tackle. Like we were looking at, I don't remember what show we were running, but like I thought Jake Matthews was in like at the twilight of his career, and he's like 31, 32. Like,
He's just been playing so well for so long that
yeah,
you think
yeah.
he's old. It's kind of like that when you so we're like Chris Jones got to be 30. No, Chris Jones is 28.
28.
28.
The team's big needs are really quarterback, and I think they do need another wide receiver outside of Drake London. They need another.
Yeah.
They need a for
Jordan
sure.
Addison?
I mean, maybe, but I think that's a little early for him in that first round.
Possibly.
And I think there are a lot of good wide receivers you can get later. I think also they need an edge. I think they need to get somebody who can get consistent pressure under the quarterback. I mean, they don't. Grady Jarrett's getting up there. He's still a good football player, but I don't necessarily think you can count on him to generate consistent pass rush. And none of these other guys really scare you at all. I mean, Taquan Graham is it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at it, I mean, I was watching. So I have like Quentin Johnson, like my number one wide receiver off the board, or Jackson Smith and Jugba, and then I think Quentin Johnson. But anyways, you can put one or two, right? And I was watching Steve Smith the other day. He was mentioning Quentin Johnson. I didn't really notice this, and then I went back and watched some tape on him. I'm like, Quentin Johnson's fast. He's big. He's kind of like a Calvin Johnson Jr., right? He could take it to the house off of his bubble screen, but when he goes up for the catch, he kind of catches it like T-Rex arms and into the body. And I'm like, I don't know how well that will translate to the league. Kind of catching. When you're going up for 50-50 balls, because we want to see our wide receivers high pointed. Jackson Smith and Jugba does that
I
perfectly.
mean,
Jordan Addison does that
Drake
perfectly.
London, who's on their roster now, does that. I mean, they could take the wide receiver in the second round and take like that kid from Tennessee who can just straight up fly.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Jalen Hyatt. Yeah, Jalen
Yeah.
Hyatt. That'd be
I
awesome.
mean, if he's still there in the second round, that'd be a slam dunk of a pick. And if they
That
can
would
address
be
edge here,
yeah. And Jalen Hyatt, he led the league. He led the college football with catches over like 40 yards. He had the highest per catch highest average per catch in the NCAA. So yeah, I mean he's a guy that can stretch the field and take the top off the defense. I'm trying to look at certain free agents. I mean, I do think that they need an emphasis on offensive line. They do need
yeah.
to maybe draft
I mean, Chris
depth at running
Lindstrom's like
back.
a solid right guard. Like they do have some good running backs. I mean, they have Caleb Huntley, who was solid at times this season. Tyler Algier, who was solid. Cordell Patterson is obviously still on this team. But they need another wide receiver to complement Drake London because I mean Kyle Pitts is coming back, but he's been injured. I think their secondary is actually pretty good. AJ Terrell is coming off getting burnt in that championship game to start out into a really solid NFL career so far. At one point, he was the highest rated corner by PFF. At one point this season, I didn't end the season there, but Jalen Hawkins is a young player. Richie Grant's a young player who played well. Casey Hayward cannot stay healthy no matter where he plays, but he's a good player when he's healthy. That secondary could use another back, though. Another guy, Rashad Fenton, is a free agent. Isaiah Oliver is also a free agent. Both those guys are starting nickel corners at some point in that offense or that defense.
Yeah, I totally forgot about Tyler Algier.
Yeah.
I knew they had Cordell Patterson. I forgot Tyler Algier did play really pretty well for them down the stretch.
Yeah.
Had some really big games for them. But yeah, no, Davey, no, you're right. I do. AJ Terrell, perfect example. We thought that AJ Terrell wasn't going to translate well into the NFL after that debacle that he had against what was it, LSU?
Yeah.
In the college football playoff, and he's turned into a pretty good corner in the NFL. Turned into a pretty good corner in the NFL.
It's true. But yeah, let's talk about top 3 priorities when it comes to Atlanta. What should be their top 3 priorities when it comes to this particular NFL season or this particular offseason?
I'd say, I would say get more. If you're going to stick to a plan, evaluate your quarterback first. So I'd say keep your quarterback, stick to your plan, add on to the offensive line. So add weapons on offense. I'd say bolster that pass rush as well, and godly. Um, I'd say maybe add. That goes into the weapons. Add a wide receiver, but man, they need a lot. They need a lot.
I think one of their main priorities should be figure out if Desmond Ritter's the guy. I mean, you got to figure out if he's going to be the guy to take you into the future. I don't necessarily think you're going to be in a position to even draft a quarterback without having to trade up. I would probably do that if I was Atlanta. So my priority is, figure out what you got in Desmond Ritter, get him some more weapons so you can figure out what you got in him and bolster up this team in the trenches. They generated not that many sacks this past season outside of Grady Jarrett. They gave up way too many sacks. I mean, Marcus Mariota got hurt for a reason. Like, this is an offensive line that wasn't all that good this season. So
exactly, and then get both of your edge rush, as well. Your edge rush unit. I mean, you can't have too many edge rushers, on your team. And
that's true.
You get a defensive line that's pretty solid, and you're looking in good company.
Moving on from the Atlanta Falcons, let's talk about Carolina. So obviously they have a bunch of draft capital out of the Chris McCaffrey trade. They have the 9th overall pick in this year's draft. They have their own 2nd round pick. They have San Fran's 2nd round pick and their 3rd round pick. They have They have 2 4th round picks, one of them from San Fran as well, a 5th and a 7th. This pick came from Buffalo. I don't know why they have it. They're notable free agents. Obviously, Sam Darnold, Deontay Foreman, Matt Ioannidis, Cameron Irving, Bradley Bozeman, and Corey Littleton. They're shockingly negative $7 million in cap space. So they're going to have to probably find a way to release some players. They hired Frank Wright in the offseason. What do you think about that hire?
I actually love that hire, man. Frank Wright's, he's got a bad rap there in Indy. I think Frank Reich, would be a perfect coach for. I mean, he's like a bridgehead coach, but I think he'd be a good coach for that team, especially if they could add some pieces, to that roster. I mean, they're obviously they're going to be in the market for a quarterback. I mean, they're going to need. They have a lot of myriad problems. I mean, this is not a bad defense.
No,
I mean,
the defense is really good. The GM, Scott
defense is really good.
Christy Coleman, team president. When she wasn't named the team president 2 years ago, she was the first woman team president in the NFL. Now there's 2, I think. So how do the Panthers approach free agency and the draft and the Derek Carr rumors? Would you bring Derek Carr in if you were the Carolina Panthers?
Man.
Yes or no?
Well, I trust. Yes. The answer is yes. I don't want to beat around the bush because I trust Derek Carr more than Sam Darnold. Even though I think Sam Darnold played okay down the stretch, the Baker Mayfield thing didn't work out at all. Obviously, he got traded to the LA Rams. So yeah,
they just flat out released him. Like he didn't.
This is right. Yeah, not even trade him. They just released him.
Yeah,
it's like, oh my God, you're terrible.
Yeah.
Anyways, so you're in the market for a quarterback, man. Derek Carr. He needs.
I would pull the trigger on that. I think this is also the best situation for Derek Carr.
Me too.
I think they have some valuable pieces on offense. Like their offensive line is not terrible there in Carolina. They've done a good job bolstering that unit. This defense is excellent. They have some good weapons out there. And DJ Moore. I think they have Curtis Samuel still, right? No, he's in Washington. But
they have Laviska Shenault, DJ Moore,
he's not.
Terrence Marshall.
Yeah, Terrence Marshall.
Laviska Shenault's gone.
No, they still have. I'm sorry, I was wrong. They have Shai Smith. They have to figure out the tight end. And Tommy Tremble shows some promise this past season. Ike Ekwonu was probably the best left tackle that was drafted this past season. Like, yeah, this is the place that, he would go. This would be the best defense that he ever played with if he went to Carolina. This would be the best unit he's ever played with. Jeremy Chin, Xavier Dante Jackson, JC Horn, all excellent secondary.
I love Jeremy Chin. He's awesome. Yeah. Xavier Woods. You got Brian Burns at the edge.
One of the best defensive ends in the league.
Yes, Tara Gross-Mato. She's an up-and-coming young edge rusher as well. So, you're right.
And their path to getting out from underneath the salary cap situation is not that difficult. They could
Shaq Thompson.
They could just straight cut Stack Johnson, save $13 million in cap space. They could cut their center, Pat Elfine, and save $4.8 million. Damian Wilson will save them $3.6 million. It's easy for them to get back underneath the cap if they want to.
Yeah. So, my approach was, honestly, I in free agency, I try and go get Derek Carr. If, he's not looking to come to Carolina, which is, I don't want to say they're in a rebuild mode because they're not in full rebuild mode. They have we talked about it. They have a good defense there. If anything, in the draft, let's talk about the draft now. If anything, I go get a number. I go try and get a number one wide receiver next to DJ Moore. Those other two guys, Terrence Marshall's okay player, but he's not a number one. DJ Moore is not a number one guy. I mean, maybe he could be, but he's not a number one guy. He hasn't proven that he's a number one. He's
DJ Moore is I think he can be a number one. I think he's that talented, but I don't know. I
he's
think
a number two.
Okay, I mean, but in
my opinion, I'm this year's,
I think he's pretty damn good. Like I think DJ Moore.
I think he's great too.
Yeah,
I think he's great too. But my thing is, when you're a number one guy, it's like you're open when you're not open. When you're double teamed, when they're playing single high, when they're putting their best cornerback on you, and they got all the attention on you, are you going to be able to get open? I haven't really seen DJ Moore do that. I don't know if he can handle all that pressure. He's a good number two. I think he's a good Robin to somebody's Batman. So I really do think that they need a true number one wide receiver. I don't know if they get that in free agency. They sure as hell can get that in the draft.
I think I just lost him. I think he just, but yeah, I mean, they could address that in free agency. Looking at the free agency wide receivers, it's not that robust of a unit. But
yeah, they're number 9 right now, right? Number 9.
Correct.
Yeah, I'd go to get, we just talked about him. A guy like Quentin Johnson, he's a big wide receiver. He's a big play threat. I mean, you can go get him there if you're Carolina. You don't really have to add too much on defense. Running back, I mean, dude, I talked about this before. I mean, the best running back in the draft is Bijan Robinson. I mean, Dante Foreman is going to be a free agent this year. So this offseason. So
I mean, I actually had Carolina taking him, Bijan Robinson, as
Robinson. They might reach for him. I mean,
mock draft that I did. Like the fact that this team was going to run the ball so much, I take a little bit of that pressure out there. By the way, the best free agent wide receiver available in this year's cycle is Nelson Aguilar, and he's not moving the needle.
Hell no.
I mean, Allen Robinson's also a free agent. I mean,
hell no.
So I mean, if they want to address their wide receiver situation or their tight end, they're going to have to address it into that. They could end up with Mike Gesicki. I actually would like Mike Gesicki a lot in this offense.
Yeah, no, actually, he would be nice, and they do need a tight. They're in the market for a tight end as well. But
Hooper's available. Robert Tunyon's available. Hayden Hurst is a guy who's going to be available. Bobby Schultz's cousin Dalton Schultz is also available.
I just, David, I hate, now in these days, man. I know like Ezekiel Elliott was picked in the first top 10 or something, but like Bijan Robinson getting picked in the top 10, like if he doesn't pan out, I mean that's just like it's a reach in my opinion because you can. Maybe trade that pick down, that number 9 pick down. If you really want him, you could get him later in the draft. You could get him later in the first round. Find a team that's going to pick, that wants to jump in the top 10.
I've made the argument for a long time that if I was a general manager of a football team, which I'm obviously not, I would never take a running back in the first round ever.
Never. No.
I just think you can get more value other positions than running back in the first round.
They get hit so much. It's just like I'd rather take a linebacker. I'd rather take the risk. Okay, linebacker and running back. They take the most hits. They're hitting the most. And I think running backs, especially if they're getting 250 carries.
I mean, the shelf life on a running back is just not long enough to value a first round pick.
It's 4 years, David.
Let's talk top 3 priorities. When we talk about Carolina, what should be their top 3 priorities when it comes to this offseason?
Well, number one priority, I think, is to, get more weapons. Number one priority is to get a quarterback. To get a franchise quarterback, whether that's trading for Derek Carr, maybe you can, strike lightning in the bottle like the Detroit Lions kind of did with Jared Goff, right? Resurrecting his career in a way in Detroit. If not, you go into the draft, you got a top 10 pick. I mean, hopefully, I don't think Will Levis will be there. Definitely won't be. C.J. Stroud ain't gonna be there. Bryce Young ain't gonna be there. So I mean, you're looking at maybe reaching for a Tanner McKee, from Stanford or something in that nature, which I don't think they should. So I think they have to go with the skill position in the draft. So quarterback's number one main priority for me. Second main priority is getting more weapons around that quarterback, whether it's Derek Carr or whoever they decide to place in the draft, pick in the draft. And then also get more depth on that offensive line and see if you can open up some cap space to get maybe another big time free agent on the defensive side of the ball or whatever the case is.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with any of your approaches when it comes to top three players. I think number one, figure out who the quarterback is going to be going moving forward. If it's going to be Derek Carr, make it happen. If it's going to be somebody in this year's draft, make that happen. I don't think you can continue to sign like a Sam Darnold who's been there 2 years or Baker Mayfield. That experiment has not worked. Any team that's tried that particular experiment, like rehashing quarterbacks that were cast offs on other teams, that just never worked. Like they've never made that work. And weapons and then the offensive line for sure. Moving on from Carolina, let's talk about the New Orleans Saints. One of the more disappointing teams in the NFL this past season. Obviously, they didn't have a draft pick up until the Sean Payton trade. They have the 29th pick. That pick comes from Denver, from Miami, from the 49ers. That pick has been on the move a lot this season, or over the last couple seasons. They have a second-round pick. They have a third-round pick. They have a fourth-round pick, two fifths, a seventh, and then that's about it. The notable free agents: Bradley Roby, a good corner; Marcus Davenport, defensive end, who's never really panned out in the NFL; Andy Dalton, Jarvis Landry, who was probably one of the bigger flops when it comes to free agent signings this past season; PJ Williams, who's a solid corner. They have negative $55 million in cap space moving into this season. Dennis Callen will be the head coach in his second season. Mickey Loomis, then Dennis, Lasha is the team president. But the real question is, how should the Saints approach free agency and the NFL draft this year?
Oh, man, it's another team that could use a Derek Carr. Oh, man. Well, they need a quarterback. Yeah. So I think main priority for them, they have a good offensive line, man. I'm looking at their offensive line right now. James Hurst,
Cesar
Ruiz,
Cesar Ruiz might be one of the better centers in the NFL.
Yeah, Ryan Ramczyk, Cesar Ruiz, Eric McCoy. They have a good offensive line, so that's not the problem. Andy Dalton's way over the hill. Jameis Winston is, he's pretty much gotten to the doghouse after he got injured, and he never left it.
I think he's going to be a cap casualty anyways. This team can save $4 million if they cut him. Traquan Smith, who's another wide receiver on a team that's deep at the wide receiver position, $1.9 million.
Yeah, and I'd say, there's some good. And let me look at the free agent list now, because there's some good guys, in free agency. They're going to need some interior defensive linemen on this team, and I think that's what they should do. So I think quarterback, kind of bolstering their defensive line. Cam Jordan's getting up there in age.
I think Cam Jordan might get traded if they don't end up with Derek Carr. Let's just say that's a realistic hypothetical. I think Cameron Jordan and Michael Thomas will both get traded. I think this team will dive into a full rebuild.
Yeah, Michael Thomas is another guy. Oh my God!
Trevor Penning is another guy who was solid in his rookie season. But I think Cameron, because their cap situation is just so dire. Like, I think Michael Thomas, they may just trade him away for whatever they can get for him, future draft assets. Cameron Jordan is another guy who's got a big cap number. They could be like, you know what? Let's see what we can get out with him on the open market. Because, Cameron Jordan's a future Hall of Famer. Do you think he wants to spend the last couple of years of his career on a team that's not going to compete for anything? Yeah, I don't think so. Huh?
Yeah, no. So you got free agents. The interior defensive linemen. You got guys like Deron Payne, Javon Hargrave that are out there in the free agent market.
Man, I just don't know how they can. I don't know how they can get those guys with their cap situation. Like, I just don't.
Exactly.
And I know the GMs have found a way to manipulate the cap and find a way to get back under, but I just can't envision a scenario where they have money to spend this offseason.
Yeah, I don't understand. I don't know how they're going to be able to bolster that line. But at 29, they can go get a solid player. I've been mentioning this guy's name for a long time. I don't know if he'll be there. I know he's been shooting up some boards lately. But Andre Carter, if he's still there at 29, this is the guy from Army that led the NCAA in sacks 2 years ago. This year he had 4.5 sacks. He was getting double teamed, sometimes triple teamed, chipped, and from running backs at sometimes. there this year. So that's a guy to look out for if you're trying to like add to your defensive line. But definitely, I mean, at number 29, if Tanner McKee's still there, I mean, take a shot at him. But this is a team
Oh
that
man, that is too early for my opinion for to take a reach on
for
a guy
Tanner
who's
McKee, I mean,
yeah, I don't
he's been shooting. I
know.
mean, he's kind of been shooting up some draft boards. I've seen.
They have a second round pick that's not that far. I would rather take him in the second round
Take him in the
if number four.
second round, 40th overall, if he's
Yeah,
still there. There's
I think
always that team that there's always that team that likes to shoot up. But also, here's another scenario for the New Orleans Saints here. I I'm calling the Green Bay Packers. I'm like, hey, what's your Aaron Rodgers Jordan Love situation, right? Do you Are you going to keep Rodgers? Well, let's see if we can make a package for us to get Jordan Love. You know,
I just don't think they have the draft. They for sure don't have like if they trade for Aaron Rodgers, they have to match his salary.
they're
I
not
just
going to
can't.
trade for Aaron Rodgers. I'm saying like Jordan Love though.
I mean, I
Jordan,
think the Packers are done with Aaron Rodgers. He's whatever he's doing at his dark retreat.
he's like 5 years. Anyways,
is that retreat over? Like, is he still doing that? Like,
I
what's
don't know. I'm sick of him too. He's getting high. He's getting high when I need him to be throwing passes and worry about next year. Anyways, they definitely need to go get a quarterback. They need to go bolster that defensive line. I think that's what they need to do in free agency and in the draft. So I came up with a couple scenarios for him. I like to play with it a little bit. So
I mean, we're moving into top three players. We kind of talked about this right up the top. I mean, first priority should be find out who's going to be the starting quarterback of this team next season. Second is get back underneath the cap. So you can actually make some moves with this roster. And then third, I mean, this team has an excellent defense that they've been wasting for the last couple of seasons. Like they just need to bolster the offensive line a little bit. I mean, if they get a quarterback who actually play a little bit, this is a team that can go from worst to first quick.
Oh, really quick. Another thing that we need to really take into consideration is the Alvin Kamara situation, right?
Yeah, he's just facing new charges today that just dropped on the internet. Like,
that he was indicted, so we don't know what kind of punishment the NFL. I mean, they kind of waited for the situation to kind of I think they waited for the season to be done with until like the charges were actually kind of put on him and for him to go through the court case. I think as more information comes out, I think the NFL is going to give him a nice little suspension here for his
I think so.
involvement.
I think so too. And if I'm the Saints, he's one of those other guys I'm looking to move. I'm looking to move as well. Like I think
because that is well, David. I understand he's a great running back. He's a great talent, but that's the kind of situation I've seen in the NFL where it's like guys don't come back from that sometimes. Those personal situations where it's like they have a domestic or they have some type of charge like this. Sometimes they don't bounce back and they're not the same player after that.
I mean, Alvin Kamara was wildly inconsistent this past season. We'll know. Who knows what he's going to be like in this.
And we don't know how much that was weighing in on him. We don't know how much that the charges and stuff like that was weighing in on him all season.
I also imagine that those charges will eventually go away. It's just money usually talks in situations like that. Like he'll end up getting found not guilty of whatever in court. He'll end up settling in some kind of civil lawsuit. They'll pay a bunch of money and make it all go away. That's what happens. To the final team in the NFC South, the team that actually won this division at an 8-9 record. Their draft capital is right there on your screen. They have all of their own picks and nobody else's. The notable free agents, obviously Tom Brady just up there just because he's a free agent. Levante David, they have a ton of free agents really that were key to a team that won the Super Bowl just 3 years ago. Levante David, Akeem Hicks, Julio Jones, William Golston, Blaine Gabbert, Keanu Neal, Sean Murphy-Bunting, and Kyle Rudolph, who they signed in this past offseason that never really panned out or played much for them this season. Projected cap space, negative $55 million in cap space. Their head coach is Todd Bowles. Jason Licht is their GM. Brian Ford, team president. How do you approach free agency in the NFL draft if you are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, knowing Tom Brady probably not walking through that door again?
Oh my gosh, man! They need a lot of their defense. That defense looked tired. That offense looked tired. Everything looked tired. They need to bolster the offensive line. They need more depth there, especially at the interior position. Tom Brady was just like it was just like they were just at him like a second quicker than what he was used to, and I couldn't imagine if that was Blaine Gabbert because he'd be throwing picks left and right. And then the defense just, at times they were just wildly inconsistent. Levante David was probably the most consistent player, on their defense, in my opinion. And their other young linebacker, godly, his name's mistaken. He's
I
kid from
got it.
LSU.
It's
Um,
Devin White.
Devin White, yeah, Devin White was pretty consistent.
I mean, Shaquille
But
Barrett is another guy who was basically hurt all season long. They definitely missed his pressure off the edge. They
I
could.
mean, these
So
are their notable free agents. What, William Golson, Akeem Hicks, Levante David, Jamal Dean, Mike Edwards, Logan Ryan. I mean, all of those guys. Keanu Neal, Sean Murphy Bunton. I mean, that is damn near their whole defense almost.
yeah.
That is like 3/4 of their defense.
And their
So,
potential cut candidates, like I'm taking this off of ProFootballNetwork.com. Their potential cut candidates: Donovan Smith, they're starting right tackle. They can save $9 million by cutting him. They're starting right guard, or I can't remember right guard, left guard. Shaq Mason, $9.6 million. Ryan Suckup, they're starting kicker. Leonard Fournette, Lombardi Lenny, could be a cap casualty. $3.5
should
million.
be.
And Cameron Brate, $2 million. Just that doesn't even get them underneath, but those are the guys that they could cut in order to make some room for some other players.
Well, I have one thing to say about the quarterback position. Let's just start there, right? You drafted Kyle Trask in the second round, 2 years ago? A year
Correct.
ago?
2 years ago.
Do you want to see what we already know what the hell Blaine Gabbert can do. Okay. We don't know what Kyle Trask can give you. Do you want to roll the dice this year and say, let's see what our young quarterback Kyle Trask can do with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and the boys, right? Let's see what he can do.
I don't necessarily think you have a choice. Like
honestly,
like they're not picking early enough in this draft. There is
a good quarterback.
There is some rumors that because of the situation with Byron Leftwich got fired, right, and they ended up hiring the quarterback coach from the Seattle Seahawks. His name is totally escaping me right now as their new OC. But I guess the relationship between Geno Smith and that quarterback's coach is so strong that Geno Smith would consider leaving Seattle and coming to Tampa Bay to be part of this franchise because of that they're hiring that OC. They could end up with Geno Smith as their starting quarterback. I'm not sure what that does for them because of how this roster looked, even with Tom Brady on it.
Right.
And the notable free agents, as we mentioned through the list, and the players that they're going to have to lose in order for them to get back underneath the salary cap. But that is something that they could seriously entertain about the Geno Smith signing.
I mean, man, that would be, if their quarterback coach, if Geno Smith is looking, is comfortable with that quarterback coach. I mean, give him Mike Evans and giving him Chris Godwin after what he did with I wouldn't want to say that the wide receiver core in Seattle, it's not as good
close.
as those two guys.
These two.
It's close. It's close. It's close.
I think I would in a vacuum I would rather have DK Metcalf.
And the offensive line is a little bit better in my. I don't know. Is the offensive line?
Yeah.
Offensive line is just a little tad bit better than Seattle. I don't know. If I'm Geno Smith, I'm looking at it. I'm like, hey man, you saw what I just did. I had the highest completion percentage in the NFL. Comeback player of the year. I mean, why not? Let's run it. Yeah, this team.
Dave Cannells is the quarterback.
Dave
coach
Cannells. I don't.
He's the new offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah. So offensively, yeah, if Leonard Fournette's a crash casualty, Rachaad White, he's still going to be there on contract. I think he's a solid player. He looks solid down the stretch. They were going to him a lot more last year.
And they spent a very high draft pick on a kid the last season that didn't see the field very much. His name is totally escaping me. That other running back, Keyshawn Vaughn.
Keyshawn Vaughn, from
another
Kansas
guy
State.
They used a pretty early draft pick on him. So I imagine they want to find out what these two guys can do, and they could be a good tandem. And Leonard Fournette probably will be a cap casualty. Another thing that
he looked like he was burling. He was like laboring all season, right, David? He didn't look the same. Yeah.
The other thing that they could potentially think about doing here is blowing this roster up. I mean, this is a team like Tom Brady elevated this roster, but without him, I can't imagine what they'd be like without Tom Brady last season. I mean, they could trade Mike Evans away. They could trade Chris Godwin away. They could look to move some of the pieces on their defense to Devin White. And really,
they still have all their young guys. Literally, they have all their young guys. Like all their veterans are like I would say they have other like 3-4 year players like Antoine Winfield, Carlton Davis, Shaq Barrett, Devin White, Joe Trion Shoyinka, Vita Vey. I think Vita Vey's what is his like fifth, sixth. He's like sixth.
Well, they just gave him a massive extension. I
Yeah,
can't
so
imagine.
they all those guys are all still there. So they have a nice little nucleus defensively. They just need a plug in place like William Golston, Akeem Hicks, who's kind of over the hill. Levante Davis been there forever. He's going to go to a contender, I assume. So Jamal Dean, Mike Edwards. I mean, they're secondary. I mean, they're losing they're losing their safeties. They're losing most of their safeties, the corners. So I think going into the draft, I mean, I'd go, try and start with trying to bolster your defensive backfield, there in Tampa Bay, whether that's, going to get, some of these young guys. Let me look at who's probably a cornerback here. I mean, Jesse Bates is going to be available.
I mean, safety. I can't imagine he's going to be back in Cincinnati. I don't know.
Yeah, Jesse Bates is going to be available. We got, we talked about Jamal Dean. Godly. I mean, there's some guys out there that are going to be available for you.
In the draft, I mean, they could be looking at taking. I think Joey Porter Jr. will be gone, but Carl Phillips III, the kid from Utah, he could potentially still be on the board. Cam Smith, the guy we talked about before, the kid out of South Carolina.
South Carolina, yeah.
Keely Ringo,
he'll be solid. Keely Ringo's another solid guy that you can look at.
So if you want to bolster up through the draft using your secondary, you want to do it that way. That's an option for the Tampa
James Bradbury. And when I'm looking at free agents for cornerbacks, James Bradbury is going to be available. You got Cameron Sutton from Pittsburgh is going to be available. Jonathan Jones from New England is going to be available. He just came from one of the best defenses in the league. Patrick Peterson, who's older, he's going to be available as well.
I mean, Patrick Peterson may take a discount to play for a team that could win a championship. I'm not sure what they're going to do at the quarterback position at currently constructed, but I mean, quarterback, edge, cornerback, guard, running back are the big needs for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So we'll see what they end up doing with that when it comes to the draft and free agency. Let's talk priorities when it comes to this team. What should be the top 3 priorities for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Well, top priority is figuring out who's going to be your cap casualties, and how you're gonna move around some of those, how you're gonna create some cap space to sign some of the to plug and play some of these guys that you're gonna lose on the defensive side. I think that's number one. I think number 2 also is quarterback, right? Are you gonna go in the draft? Are you gonna move up in the draft? Maybe trade some guys? Are you gonna go after a Derek Carr? Are you gonna sign a Geno Smith? Or are you gonna see what Kyle Trask has? That's a big need right there. I mean, because Tom Brady really elevated.
When we talk about top 3 priorities, that quarterback.
That's probably number 1.
It's got to be number 1. I mean, the salary cap. There's always ways to manipulate the salary cap. They'll find a way. That's why these guys get paid a ton of money to do this. But the quarterback situation has got to be figured out. I mean, if you're going to go with Kyle Trask, make that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also, I mean, trying, like I said, manipulate that cap situation. And then, I mean, offensively, I mean, you already set with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Maybe add a tight end, but also, I mean, defensively, you're gonna have to really bolster that secondary because you're gonna be working with bare bones next year. And I mean, I really don't know how they're gonna be able to get. I mean, you're gonna have to pull a Seattle where you're gonna draft some young guys, and you have to really hit on your draft picks. And you have to plug and play some into this defense in the secondary because I just don't see them having enough money to sign, those guys like, Jesse Bates and
like those difference makers, players.
Difference makers. Yeah, exactly. So
we'll see what Tampa Bay Buccaneers end up doing this offseason. That's been our offseason preview for the entire NFC South. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast as we go live basically every single day, bringing you guys the most up-to-date content. Keep an eye out for our content. And if you do happen to miss us live, you can catch us on a myriad of streaming platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and of course, iHeartRadio. That link is in the chat, in the comments section on all of our main platforms, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. So thank you very much for joining us. And Izzy, I'm David Huffman, CEO of Prime Sports World, Izzy Rivera right there. Izzy, what do we do here at the Prime, my friend?
We bring the heat, ladies and gentlemen.
24/7, baby. So yeah, we'll see you guys here in a couple days. I'm running double podcast on Saturday. We're gonna be doing the crossover, talking about the NBA All-Star Weekend. And then we're also gonna be previewing the latest OWE episode with the new the Elimination Chamber preview episode. So keep an eye for that content.
Nice.
Yeah.
And we'll be bringing you some college basketball tomorrow. So we'll come back with some college basketball madness tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. You guys don't want to miss that.
Yeah, you don't want to miss that content. So we'll be back here in a couple days. You all take care and peace out, brother.
Peace out, guys.